Welcome to our next edition of A Journey Towards Continuous Delivery. Today I'm joined in the studio by Gav from our technology consultancy team, and he'll be talking to us more about continuous delivery. Last week we had Ehab telling us a bit of an introduction, so Gav, perhaps you should recap on that.
Thanks, Nadia. Yeah, so Ehab spoke last week about continuous delivery, and he touched on continuous integration, continuous deployments, and then continuous delivery, which is the ability to release almost on demand rather than a big bang approach. And he said this was a big area of testing.
Yes, he said testing was a very big part of it. How big a part?
Well, it's the main crux. It's a huge part of it. Before I jump into continuous testing, I think we should touch base on what testing is and how it plays a crucial role. Testing is the process where you validate the developed product against functional and non-functional requirements. Testing is the phase where you find out if the product actually works as per the design and whether the product fulfills the user stories that have been filled in your product backlog. In other words, the testing phase provides you with the feedback loop that you need to help determine whether the stuff you've done actually works or if further changes are needed. Faster feedback is much better for you because you know sort of early on in the cycle. And in today's world, all the dev teams, we kind of try and automate as much as possible and to try and take away all the manual steps. There's a little fact. Did you know that in 2011, 7 years ago, Amazon released every 11.6 seconds?
No, I did not know that.
By the time this interview's over, they would have released a production over 30 times.
Wow.
So and that's a production-ready release, which is safe and better for everybody to use out there. But you can only release faster if it's safe, and the big mantra we have at Harrington Star Tech Consulting is faster, safer, better. But you can only release faster if ultimately it's safer. There's no point being fast if what you release out there breaks everything. So in order to have continuous deployments, we need to have a kind of new strategy on the way of working. We need a faster sort of feedback loop to ensure what we build today individually as sort of separate people doesn't break the collective effort that the team makes.
So what types of testing will help continuous delivery?
So in testing we have many different areas, but if we focus on sort of the three main areas, we've got right at the beginning, we've got unit testing, which is done by the developers in a sort of a TDD approach where they write their failing test first, and once they've written their failing test they'll write their code around it. These are fantastic tests because they're so fast to execute. They're the fastest ones and they're written so early on, so the developers know that what they're making individually is actually working. Next you've got the integration tests, which I guess you're bringing together pieces of code and say like the database together, integrating it and making sure that the parts are working. Yeah. This is still normally done by like the development team. Some testers do integration tests, and it's a collaboration between the both of them. And then you've got functional tests where you bring together the integration test, the back end, the database, along with the front end. And you use something like Selenium, WebDriver, that will mimic user interaction on kind of like the web page to make sure that everything's working as if a user was testing it. And they're the traditional testing areas, but in continuous deployment we have to do things slightly differently. We have to ensure that they're always part of the build so that when the developer checks something in, the tests are constantly running, they're happening all the time so that we know that we've got safety, that we've not broken something. And sometimes these automated tests take a while to run, so we have to choose sort of happy paths which way we're going to go down. We can't test everything if some of the Selenium tests are going to take hours to run. So we might just section off different areas if we're clever about how we break everything out. If we know we're only working on this bit, we can test this bit here and not have to test the whole thing end to end.
So testing's an integral part. I can definitely see that. But is it only testers that do the tests?
No, in Agile, everybody is a tester, everybody's a developer, everyone has to work together. It's a sense of team and it's a definition of done. So the whole team should own the deployment and the delivery. And our definition of done is a collective responsibility. At the end of the sprint, we know that we finished everything if, in an Agile way, if everybody's done what they need to do. In continuous delivery, we're still a team and we still have to work together. So know that the developers will write the unit tests and the integration tests, the developers will write the functional tests, and everybody helps to do the testing, and you even get the business coming in and helping out with acceptance testing.
That sounds great. So the pros mean we can release faster, and the defects are caught earlier, but there must be a downside.
There's always a downside. It's like a yin and yang, I guess. While it's all well and good releasing faster, releasing every day, sometimes releasing so much more frequently, the company needs to have a culture of testing. Everybody needs to pitch in and ensure that what we're making is safe and it has been tested and it's going out there the best as it can be. But the downsides are things like having the tests up to date. If the tests aren't up to date, then developers developing something new tend to make it, but if the tests are out of date, they're going to break, and we don't have safety in knowing that those tests, the code has been written to a safe level. Testing time as well, so while unit tests can take a fraction of a second to run and they're all out there really quickly, functional tests, especially using sort of the front end with Selenium or WebDriver, can take hours or days to run, so we have to choose how we're going to test those. And the things like environments, they need to be standardized. We can't be testing against sort of an environment that doesn't really mimic production if our tests aren't going to be sort of running against it, and we don't have the right environments. We're wasting our time.
So it's definitely possible, but it requires a lot of work. Maybe you've got a few last words or bits of advice.
I guess to recap, it's all about sort of faster time to market, but we've got to control that risk. So we have to be safe. So we test early, we test often, and we automate as much as we can.
Yeah.
That's why, although we like to work faster, we have to be safer, and safer in the knowledge that something else hasn't been broken. And that's kind of continuous deployment in a nutshell, continuous delivery. But we have to ensure that the testing's done right. Here's a fantastic series, Nadia. Hopefully our viewers can join us next week, where EHAB's going to be talking about continuous integration.
Great. So if you want to be faster, safer, better, please contact our Harrington Starr Technology Consulting team, Gav or EHAB on each of the series, and all our contact details will follow after this. So hopefully see you again next week. Gav, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Nadia.
Cheers.
Cheers.